My name is Renee Holloway. I am 34 years old. For 9 years, I was a wife. For 7 of those 9 years, I was also a woman who did not know that a $1.1 million life insurance policy existed in her name because her husband had been intercepting the mail. I am a former English teacher. I spent 6 years teaching high school sophomores how to find the hidden meaning in a text, how to read what wasn't written on the page, how to notice the word a character didn't say. I taught a unit on forgery in literature. I know what a forged signature looks like. What I did not know, until a Tuesday morning in April, sitting at my aunt's kitchen table with a cup of coffee going cold in my hand, was that my own signature had been forged on a document for years. And the person who did it was currently calling my phone for the 3rd time in 40 minutes. Before I tell you what happened next, and I promise you it is worth staying for, take 1 second and hit that subscribe button if you're new here. Drop your city and state in the comments. I want to know where you're watching from. It matters to me, actually. Now let me take you back to where this story really starts. Memphis in September has a particular smell. Wet concrete after rain, and something sweet underneath it. Honeysuckle that never quite dies. The city raised me, and I loved it the way you love a complicated family member. Completely, and without complete understanding. I grew up on Poplar Avenue in a red brick house that leaned slightly toward the street, like it was straining to hear the traffic. My parents were both teachers. My mother, biology, my father, history. The house smelled like strong coffee and old books, and on Sundays, the particular chemical warmth of my father's iron pressing his church shirt. We were not wealthy. We were not struggling. We were the kind of family that used the word fine the way other families use wonderful, as a genuine verdict, not a deflection. I was 14 when the house fire happened. My parents did not survive it. I was at a school retreat in Arkansas when the call came. I remember the retreat coordinator's voice. I remember the particular texture of the payphone's plastic against my ear. They still had payphones in 2005 at that camp. I do not remember the drive home. What I do remember is Aunt Dorothy Holloway drove 4 hours from her house outside Nashville the same night. She arrived at the neighbor's house where I was staying with a paper grocery bag of food, a change of clothes for me, and a calm on her face that I now understand was not the absence of grief, but its most disciplined expression. She was my father's younger sister by 9 years. She worked 31 years as a postal carrier. She wore her hair natural before it was fashionable again, kept a vegetable garden in her backyard, and said hum the way some people say amen, which is to say, as a complete sentence. She became my legal guardian without fanfare. She did not rearrange her life theatrically for my benefit. She simply made room for me in it, with a matter-of-factness that I understood only later was one of the highest forms of love. I lived with Dot from 14 to 18. Then I went to the University of Tennessee on a partial academic scholarship. I majored in English, as my father had, and spent 4 years being more confident in fictional relationships than real ones. I met Garrett Holloway my senior year. Different Holloways, no relation. This was, I realize now, the first thing about him that I found significant. Garrett was 23 when we met. He was already in sales, already polished, already the kind of man who opened doors, not because he'd been told to, but because he understood the signal it sent. He was funny. He listened when you talked. He remembered your coffee order and your sister's birthday, except I didn't have a sister, and the fact that he remembered the negative space of me, the absences, was what made me fall in love with him. We got married at 25. Small ceremony. Dut's backyard, late May. At the reception, Dut took my hand and said, "He's good at people, baby. Just make sure he's good to you too." She laughed when she said it, not a warning laugh. A quiet one. The kind you tuck away and forget about. I forgot about it. The thing about Garrett is that he was not cruel. I want to be precise about this because the temptation in a story like mine is to say that I simply failed to see the monster. That's not what happened. There was no monster. There was a man who was deeply, quietly, meticulously self-interested, and who had learned to dress that interest in the language of care. He was the one who suggested I leave teaching when Micah was born. "You're too good for that salary, Renee. You shouldn't have to fight a system that doesn't value you. Let me carry this for a while." And I heard love in that. I heard someone seeing me. What I didn't hear, because I wasn't listening for it, was the way the sentence ended with me. Let me carry this. Let me be the one who knows where the money is. Let me be the bridge between you and the financial world. I want to be fair. He did carry it. For years, we did not struggle. The mortgage was paid. The kids had everything they needed. I had, genuinely, a comfortable life. What I did not have was a single document with my name on it that I had read myself. The joint account was his paycheck, his log-on, his statements forwarded to his work email because, he said, I handle it all there, it's just easier. I had a debit card and a Venmo account. I thought that was normal. I think some of you watching this know exactly what I mean. Dot called me every Sunday. We talked about Micah, about her garden, about the books I was reading now that I had time to read again. She never mentioned the policy. She believed, I understand now, that Garrett had told me about it when she told him, which she did once, around year 4 of our marriage, when she called our landline and he answered, and she explained she was calling to confirm the policy was still active. He told her, of course. Renee knows everything about it. She's just putting Micah down. Can I take a message? He did not take a message. This is the thing about. She kept everything. 31 years as a postal worker had made her deeply, almost reverently, respectful of documents. Every premium receipt in a manila folder, organized by year, in a beige filing cabinet in the spare bedroom, she called her office. She had the original policy document. She had every annual summary letter. She had the certified mail receipt from 2019, the year the policy crossed a cash value threshold that made a policy loan legally possible. She had the one that, when I finally held it in my hands, had a signature at the bottom that was almost mine. Almost. The R in Renee curled the wrong direction. A small thing. The kind of thing you'd miss if you weren't looking for it, or if you'd never spent 3 weeks teaching 15-year-olds the difference between an authentic signature and a careful imitation. I had. Lily was born in January. The newborn months have a quality to them that I can only describe as compressed. Time moves strangely. Everything is both urgent and suspended. Garrett was present in the way he'd always been, attentive in bursts, smoothly unavailable when it counted. He traveled more than usual that spring, which he attributed to a product launch cycle. I had a newborn and a 7-year-old, and I did not audit his calendar. In March, Duck called on a Sunday and said something that lodged in me like a splinter. Baby, did Garrett ever tell you the policy matured into the loan option? I've been meaning to ask. I said, what policy? The silence on her end was exactly 3 seconds. I counted them later in my memory. Then she said, oh, Renee, come see me. I drove to Nashville the following Saturday with both kids in the car. Dot's house is a small ranch style on a cul-de-sac with a magnolia tree in the front yard that she planted herself in 1987. The house smells like cedar and something floral from a plug-in she's used for 40 years. Her kitchen has a linoleum floor with a faded pattern of geometric flowers, and the table is an old Formica with a chip in the corner from when my father dropped a cast iron skillet visiting in 1998. She told me that story once. She remembered it because she remembered everything. The filing cabinet was open when I walked in. She had pulled the folders for the last 5 years. She walked me through them with the patience of a woman who once hand-delivered the mail of an entire neighborhood and understood that information is weight and that you hand it to people carefully. I stared at the 2019 letter for a long time. The signature. The R. I didn't sign this, I said. No, that said. I didn't think so either. That night, after the kids were asleep on Dot's pull-out sofa, I sat in her kitchen and opened Garrett's email on my phone. He'd never changed the password in 7 years. I had not thought to look in it before because it had not occurred to me that looking would be necessary. This is the particular damage of a certain kind of marriage. It doesn't make you suspicious. It makes you incurious. It trains you over years not to ask. There was a thread with a property management company called Birchwood Residential. 12 months of rent payment confirmations. A unit in Brentwood. A name I didn't know on the lease. Shay. I sat with that for a while. The refrigerator hummed. A car went by outside. Lily made a small sound from the next room and then went quiet. The following week, Garrett called me on a Tuesday evening and asked when I was coming home. Soon, I said. The kids need a routine, Renee. I know. I'm taking care of some things. What things? I'll let you know, I said. He called again, Thursday. His voice had a new quality to it. Not quite alarm, but the early cousin of it. A careful precision. I want to make sure we're communicating, Renee. I want us to be on the same page. We will be, I said.
Give me a little more time.
I had called Marcus Whitfield 2 days earlier. Marcus was the man Dot's friend Louise had recommended, a former state insurance commissioner, now private fraud recovery, known in Nashville for being meticulous to the point of maddening and effective to the point of legendary. He had a voice like gravel and a way of listening that made you feel like everything you said was being immediately filed in the correct folder. When I sat in his office and put out some manila folders on his desk and showed him the signature, he looked at it for about 4 seconds and said, "Forgery, policy loan fraud, and very likely wire fraud given the LLC. Give me 10 days. I gave him 10 days. Garrett called 2 more times. Each time, I answered with a calm I had not known I possessed until I needed it. Each time, I said some version of I'm fine, I'll be home soon. Each time, his voice tightened slightly, like a rope with more weight on it than it was designed for. I was not home. I was at Dot's kitchen table, watching Marcus build a case. I want to stop here for a second and ask you something real. Have you ever realized, not slowly but all at once, in a single moment, that someone you trusted completely had been treating your trust as a resource to be managed? If that's ever happened to you, type I see it now in the comments. Because what happened next, on a Tuesday morning in April, is the part of the story I've replayed the most. The 10 days Marcus asked for became 12. I spent them at Dot's. Micah went to school from there. Drove him each morning in her 2009 Camry, which had a pine tree air freshener and a small laminated card of Psalm 23 on the dashboard. He didn't ask many questions. He was 7, and children that age have a genius for adaptation that adults have usually lost. He made a fort in the spare room using Dot's filing cabinet as one wall. Lily didn't know there was anywhere else to be. On the 9th night, after both kids were down, I sat on Dot's back porch. It was late April in Tennessee, and the air had that particular soft weight it carries in the weeks before summer actually commits. The garden was dark. I could smell the earth from her raised beds. A porch light 2 yards over made a small yellow halo. I allowed myself, on that porch, to feel everything I had been carefully not feeling for 2 weeks. Not the betrayal. That had a clean shape. I could look at it directly. What I let myself feel was the grief, for the 9 years that now had a different texture when I ran my hands over them. Micah's birth. Our first house. The Sunday mornings I had believed were ordinary and good. None of those things had been false. Some things can be real and stolen at the same time. I also let myself feel, for exactly as long as it took to feel it, the particular shame of being a woman who taught subtext and missed her own. Then I put it down. Not because it was finished. Because the porch wasn't the place for it. The porch was the place for what came next. I am allowed to have what is mine. I said it out loud, to no one. The garden didn't answer. That was enough. Tuesday, April 14th, 9:17 in the morning. Dot's kitchen. Linoleum floor, geometric flowers, chipped formica. 2 mugs of coffee. The window over the sink showing the magnolia in the front yard. Lily asleep in the bedroom. Micah at school. Marcus had called the night before to confirm. Both calls were going out at 9. One to Garrett's HR department at the medical device company. One to the insurance company's fraud division. He would be making them himself, from his office, with documentation attached and ready to transmit. And I did not talk much that morning. She refilled my coffee once. She kept her hands around her own mug, which had a small chip on the rim she'd been ignoring for years. The kitchen clock ticked. It always had. At 9:43, my phone rang.
Garrett.
I let it go. At 9:51, it rang again. I let it go. Dot watched me with an expression that was not pity and not triumph. It was the look of a woman who has delivered a great deal of mail in her life, who knows that what matters is not the drama of the arrival, but whether it gets there. At 10:04, it rang a 3rd time. I picked up. Renee. His voice had lost the careful precision. There was something raw under it, not remorse, not yet. The raw material of a man realizing the shape of what's in front of him. I heard you. I'm here. I need to explain. Marcus has everything, Garrett. I kept my voice even. Not cold. Even. Don't come home tonight. Silence. Then, Renee, please. Don't come home tonight. I ended the call. I set the phone on the Formica table. Dot put her hand over mine for about 3 seconds. Then she picked up her coffee mug and took a sip and said, "You want toast?" I said yes. She made toast. That was it. That was the whole confrontation. No screaming. No crying. No room full of witnesses watching him crumble. Just a chipped table, a kitchen clock, and 6 words delivered without drama into a phone. The simplicity of it was, I think, the most satisfying part. Okay, I want to know what you think. When Garrett finally understood what was happening, what do you think he did first? Option A, he called to try to negotiate directly. Option B, he called his parents. Option C, he showed up at the house anyway. Drop your guess in the comments. Because the answer is one of those, and the way it played out tells you everything about who he actually was. He called his parents. He drove to their house in Germantown, 20 minutes from ours, and he was, I'm told, already composing the version of events he wanted them to have. The version where Renee had been distant since the baby, where stress had distorted things, where there were 2 sides. He got there to find that Garrett's younger brother, Kevin, had already heard from Marcus's paralegal. Kevin, who had worked a decade in banking before starting his own firm and had a specific, professional contempt for policy loan fraud, had spent 40 minutes on the phone with their parents before Garrett's car pulled into the driveway. So when Garrett walked in, the story was already the right shape. His parents did not throw him out. They are not those people. But his father, who I had always liked, a retired engineer who wore the same 4 sweaters in rotation and called me darlin' at holidays, sat Garrett down and said, in the way only fathers can say certain things, you need to get a lawyer, and you need to tell me the truth. Garrett did not tell the truth. Not all of it. Not then. But the truth was already moving on its own. The insurance company's civil recovery team contacted the Delaware LLC within 48 hours. The LLC, it turned out, was not only a vehicle for the policy loan money. Marcus's research had surfaced a vendor kickback arrangement between the LLC and one of Garrett's regional accounts, a side income stream that had never been disclosed to the company. When the insurance company flagged the account, the medical device company's legal team ran their own review. Garrett was terminated on a Wednesday. Ethics clause. By Friday, Shay, the name on the Brentwood lease, had stopped responding to his calls. This I know because it came up later, mentioned matter-of-factly by Kevin, who was in contact with Marcus through the recovery process. I did not seek this information. It arrived, the way consequences do when they are natural, without drama, because it was simply the next true thing. The Delaware LLC was dissolved under fraud findings. The insurance company began civil recovery proceedings for the $180,000. Garrett moved into his parents' basement in Germantown at 38 years old. He took his 4 sweaters and left the rest. Meanwhile, I filed for divorce with a family law attorney, had vetted with the same care she once devoted to organizing mail routes. The house, which was jointly held, went through standard proceedings. I did not fight for it. It was a house I had stopped being able to see myself in, and I didn't want the memory of the Formica in his mother's kitchen confused with the Formica in mine. The children's school sent a card, signed by Micah's teacher and most of his class, that said we miss Micah and hope to see him soon. It was addressed to both of us. I kept it. 3 months after the calls went out, I had the only direct conversation I chose to have with Garrett. His lawyer had requested it. Not a deposition, not a formal proceeding, just a conversation, in a conference room, with both attorneys present. I agreed, with conditions. My attorney speaks first. The subject is the children only. I will not respond to anything that is not about Micah and Lily's welfare. He looked smaller than I expected, which I had not expected to be the first thing I noticed. Thinner. The particular thinness of a man who has been running on adrenaline for 3 months and has run out of road. He was wearing the blue shirt I'd bought him 2 Christmases ago. I don't think he'd noticed. He said, I know I don't have the right to ask anything of you. I said, no, you don't. So let's talk about the kids. We talked about the kids, visitation, schooling, holidays. I was precise and fair. I was willing to give him every access a loving father deserves, because whatever else was true, Micah loved him, and that was a fact I was not permitted to weaponize. When the conversation turned toward explanation, toward the understructure of why, I said, "Garrett, I'm not here for that conversation. I may be someday, not today." His attorney was watching me the way people watch someone do something technically difficult very calmly, as if they'd expected performance and received instead a statement of fact. Garrett's mother called me separately a week later. She said, "I owe you an apology for what our family failed to see." She said it plainly, without deflection, without inserting herself into the center of her own apology. I thanked her. I told her the children would always know her. I meant it. Kevin called Marcus to personally thank him, which relayed to me over the phone in a tone of quiet satisfaction I had never heard from her before and recognized immediately as what it was. The sound of a woman who had kept 13 years of folders and been vindicated without having to say so. It is now 14 months since that Tuesday morning in April. I am teaching again, composition and critical reading, 2 sections at a community college about 40 minutes from Dot's house. I drive there on Tuesdays and Thursdays. My class is mostly students returning to school after gaps of a decade or more, parents, career changers, people who got here the long way around. I find I have more to give them than I had to give 17-year-olds. We talk about subtext. We talk about what a text is doing that it is not saying. They get it immediately, most of them, because they are old enough to have lived it. I am renting a house 2 miles from Dot's 3 bedrooms, a yard that needs mowing, a shed in the back that I have not opened yet. Fine.
Warm. Mine.
Micah has Dot's filing cabinet in his room. We repurposed it for Lego storage earlier this year. He helped me carry it up the stairs and was very serious about which sets went in which drawer. The bottom drawer still has 3 manila folders in it that I left on purpose. He doesn't know what they are. Someday, when he's old enough to understand it as a story about care rather than a story about damage, I will show him. Lily has never known a different home. She has learned to walk on the kitchen floor I chose myself. Terracotta tile, secondhand, imperfect, warm in the afternoon light. She finds the grout lines interesting. She traces them with one finger and looks up at me like she's discovered something. I am not dating. I am not in a hurry. I am reading a lot. I describe myself, when people ask, as being in the orientation phase of my actual life. I mean this with genuine optimism. Last month, I went to Dot's for Sunday dinner, as I do most weeks. After we ate, she took a new folder from the filing cabinet she'd gotten to replace the one Micah appropriated, and she slid it across the table to me. It was the original policy document, the one from the year I turned 21, before I'd met Garrett, before any of this was a story. "I always meant for you to have the original," she said. I held it for a long time. My name on the cover page, in the typeface of an insurance company that has existed since 1947 and does not know it is the center of anyone's life story. Renee D. Holloway. Beneficiary. They are curved the right direction. There's something I've been sitting with since all of this happened. Something I want to say carefully because I don't think it's a lesson, exactly. It's just what I know now that I didn't know before. Financial control dressed as protection is still control. And the women who love us most are sometimes the ones holding the proof we never knew we needed. I was not naive. I was not stupid. I was someone who trusted and who had been taught, gently, over years, through small and reasonable sounding steps, not to look. Trust is not the same as visibility. I know that now in my body the way I know it nowhere else. The most radical thing I did was not the phone call. It was driving to Dot's house and sitting at her kitchen table and being willing to look at a document with my own name on it. That's it. That was the whole revolution. Seeing my own name on something that was always mine. If you have a story like this, partial or complete, financial or otherwise, I want you to tell it in the comments. Start with this. I didn't know until. That's all. Just that first sentence. You'd be surprised how many people are waiting to read it. My name is Renee Holloway. I used to be the woman who taught other people to find the subtext. Now I live in it clearly. If this story stayed with you, Subscribe so you don't miss my next story. Share this story with your friends, or maybe someone who needs to hear it. And everything I mentioned, policy loans, fraud recovery, what to do if you recognize any part of this. Thank you for being here.